Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your indulgence, I'll take some time over this thoroughly very report, and where I don't pick up on some of the deputy's comments, I'll come back to those at the end specifically. Members, the report before us this evening is to provide an update on the progress of the delivery of housing and employment in Waltham, to outline a number of delivery options, and to recommend the option that we consider provides the best level of certainty for delivery of our commitments. Now, members, if we look at, just to repeat part of what the leader said, it is 10 years since this land was suggested for development. Around that time, the original figures had been spoken about with 10,000 properties. It's 4 to 5 years since we published our core strategy, with this land firmly proposed for development. At that stage, we were talking about 6,500 to 7,500 houses, and it's now approaching 2 years since the World War proposals, as part 2 of our revised borough plan, completed the consultation process and were submitted for examination in public. And they contained a proposal for 6,000 houses. The landowner promoters, and yes, those two terms are actually very much interchangeable and used interchangeably, continue to emphasise their commitment to development of this land area. And we have no reason to believe that that is not the case. It's important to understand. And that has to be emphasised this evening very, very strongly. Now, the Council, despite everything you may have heard, have worked diligently with the landowners to try to achieve progress against the commitments outlined and detailed in the updated borough plan. But to date, we remain just with those assurances that no real apparent progress in the submission to us of a planning application. And frankly, this is astonishing. It would not have been a surprise to us if the landowners had submitted an application at the time the plan was submitted for examination 2 years ago. We've heard a couple of comments this evening about the fact that nothing could be done until we formally adopted the plan. Well, that frankly is not correct. It will be most usual, certainly something of this size, for outline applications have been prepared in advance of final approval, particularly given that the Council was promoting and supporting the over 1,300 people on our waiting list and many others in unsuitable or permanent living conditions. And Waltham's planned to deliver up to 2,000 affordable homes. But not only is there a fundamental social imperative for certainty of delivery, there is also a planning strategy aspect insofar as, and this has been mentioned this evening, insofar as continued uncertainty over timeline delivery does give speculative developers an opportunity to make submissions for development on currently protected greenfield sites. So, as you, and I hope the public can probably appreciate, our concern over lack of progress and lack of certainty over timeline delivery has just grown and grown. Now, we have therefore taken some time to consider what the options and implications might be in relation to delivery of that planned and required housing. And these options are summarised in sections 15 to 21 of this report. But just to remind at the meeting, one is to encourage and support the landowner who does have sufficient land control. Now, that would be contrary to our desire and our policy for comprehensive development and comprehensive submission in terms of our application. It has to be in tandem with Junction 10 delivery, and land is not with that promoter. And this part of the land for the overall Worldham site is, to a significant degree, effectively landlocked. So there's two difficulties with that option. We could, of course, just wait until the land ownership issues have been resolved, and that's what's been suggested and pushed to succeed. Why don't you just wait? It's all going to happen in the end. And then encourage a joint overall application. That, of course, would still have the needs for an overall Junction 10 land assembly requirement put together. A few of the speakers this evening have spoken about the fact that Junction 10 does not need any land beyond that in the ownership of the two primary landowners, but in fact the design that's in the plan is of course just an indicative design. It is not necessarily the design that either Hampshire County Council or Highways England would want to see pursued. And many of the discussions at the time that were being put together did look at a major junction on that part of the highway that would require land that's outside the ownership of the two primary landowners. And the third option was to seek a development partner to develop the entire scheme, to promote the entire scheme, with acquisition of the land through a borough council initiated compulsory purchase order. Now, that has with it, this has come up this evening and we understand it, and it's identified in the report, that does have a time problem potentially in selecting a development partner. We can't just go out and select anyone, we have to go out on a procurement process. We clearly would have soft marketing testing in advance of that. And there is a downtime in terms of securing an overall CPO. On balance, however, we do consider that the strategy of the development partner plus a CPO gives the best certainty of delivering Wellborn and within an overall reasonable timescale. And this is what is recommended in the report. So in the report, sections 10 to 14 indicates the Council's position and understanding in relation to the site promoters. Sections 23 to 28 outline the process to select a development partner. Sections 32 to 37 outline the Council's justification position for the CPO recommendation. And sections 58 to 65 give an estimate of financial implications and the financing mechanisms. And section 45 to 47 is a summary of the legal implications. Appendix A, which we have dismissed this evening, is in fact an excellent high-level timeline estimate for the actions we are proposing, and clearly illustrates that we would expect this to move ahead with three concurrent parallel activities. Overall, we would see that helping us to achieve a more acceptable timeline. The report also recommends that the Council acquire an estimated cost of about £1.8 million the residential properties that are identified and detailed in the attached confidential papers. Just to understand why we do this, well, the paper properties themselves feel they are being blighted by the cerebral process, but secondly, prioritisation of such an acquisition is in accord with general government guidance in relation to CPO activity. So those general guidance, if we have this situation, we should proceed with acquisition in advance of completing the CPO process. Now, if I come to the deputies, let me start with Mr. Cunningham. Unfortunately, very little to do with delivery of the report that's before us tonight. More, in fact, to do with continued opposition to the Wellborn proposals. He doesn't fundamentally believe that we need to provide these houses, or that we should provide these houses. All of his objections were covered by the inspector and found by the inspector to be unfounded. Now, the cost of the process, and the report does identify the cost between £1 to £2 million estimate, would be a fundamental aspect of identifying and negotiating with a development partner. And the timescales in the Wellborn report in terms of build-out rates were matters very closely looked at by the inspector and found by him to be very sound in terms of the 20-year timescale for delivery of Wellborn. If I come to Mr. Lodge, he takes a very similar position to that of Mr. Cunningham. Maybe it's usually through about more insults at individuals and as the council than Mr. Cunningham. Whether I should thank Mr. Cunningham for that or not, but certainly didn't help the deputation. Money spent on the plan, of course, came from housing delivery grants and not as a direct charge on the council tax. And that's something we shouldn't forget. The council tax, in firm, has had £1 penny of council tax to cover the £2 million that we spent on bringing the borough plan through to fruition. And in fact, in terms of accusing the council of having ulterior motives, you might well wonder why we spent so much money in actually developing a plan if we had ulterior motives. They run this all the time. There's just one very small grain of statement validity in what Mr. Mike said. And that was his use. Yeah, I was surprised it was. But that was your use of the word mess. And you can look up the definition of mess, but mess means something which isn't as structured as it should be. And yes, the situation is not ideal, and that's fundamentally the reason why these proposals before us this evening. We wish to rectify the situation to give a degree of certainty within known and limited timescale going forward. I'll come to Mr. Smith. Well, as I've said before, the reasons for these recommendations are to give us certainty, not of delivery, because as I said earlier, the landowners are committed to delivery, but we need commitment of delivery within a known and definable timescale. The junction sensitive treaties, as I said earlier, they are indicative and they were not the final statements. There was no reason whatsoever why the landowners had to wait for adoption of the Wellborn Plan before submitting a planning application. That really is an incorrect statement at the best. And I reject totally the statement that Cllr and Borough Council manipulated the process to delay. If we'd done that, as we would not have £2 million bringing the plan forward to delivery. We were very keen to see delivery and see delivery within the timelines included in the plan. As has been confirmed, there is no legal agreement for BST in relation to their ability to promote the land and to enter into Section 106 agreements, which would be essential for any planning application to be submitted to this council. And of course, we accept that the costs we have in the report are an indication. They're an indication of the best estimates that have been given to us by our external advisors, and that they're the figures which were shown fully in the report. And the development partner, of course, cannot be sought until we have agreed to move forward, which is what we're talking about this evening. And the next stage we would get involved in, where we agree the proposal this evening, will be to soft-test the market situation with regard to the proposal partners, and then to go out to a formal procurement process, which we as a public body would have to do. We come to Mr. Thistlethwaite. Just repeat that the land situation, of course, is not totally tied down, and that is unfortunate. So that at this stage, all we could see is that only one of the promoters could actually come forward with a meaningful application that would include 106 agreements. The Junction 10 situation is more or less what I've said twice before in terms of what has come forward, and that would be the next stage. In terms of the development proposal, we would complete the design of that to the acceptance of Hampshire Council and Highway England, and then of course us as the planning authority. In terms of the statements about us being unwilling to participate in discussions or take calls, there was a time when there were certain elements of the work that was being undertaken. We were suggesting very strongly that the landowners should continue and put their effort into the preparation of a planning application and look at some of the technical aspects, such as the environmental considerations, rather than certain other ones. And they're the ones that we were very strongly suggesting as well on some of the discussions they wished to have with us. And the meeting on consultation of this council was cancelled on the grounds that we thought it would be inappropriate at that point, given the need for a planning application and environmental studies. And in terms of the comment that he believes it's a premature process, I think as I said earlier, that is not our considered view. We believe this process is appropriate at this time, and does give us certainty. We have listened to the landowners, we have deferred this meeting to give them more time, but as the leader said at the beginning of the meeting, that time did not give rise to the documents that we were told we would give rise to. And this is the reason we went up to this meeting this evening. The council, this is Mrs. Bryant. I fully accept she has been totally consistent, and Councillor Mr. Bryant been totally consistent in their opposition to the North Ferryman development. The comments about the next stage of detail are welcome, and I think that does reflect the fact that councillors do strongly give their views, but once certain stages are reached, they don't focus on achieving the best that they can. And I thank Councillor Mr. Bryant for those comments. She certainly understands that having got to this current situation, it is important that we can move forward with a degree of certainty over timeline of delivery. So members, the recommendations that I'm asking you to support this evening are detailed on pages 9 and 10 of the report. That's recommendations A through to K. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.